dancers. Will you welcome, please, Margot Fonteyn, Dame Martha Fonteyn. Nice to see you. No bouquets, I'm sorry to say. You haven't seen anything yet. Dear Margot, perhaps you could give me a lesson. As I greeted you there, I tended almost to kiss the hand, but someone told me that there's a right and wrong way of doing that. Is it that you do or don't actually touch the hand when you bend over to kiss it?
I would imagine that since in the days when hand kissing was very common, the ladies were wearing white gloves, it's very possible that the gentleman did not quite touch the gloved hand because he could have had a very large moustache with pomade or dye or something or other. Perhaps he was pretending his moustache was black or brown and it was really... I don't know. I mean, I'm just inventing things because I don't really know at all, but I can see that something like this could have happened and the glove would have had a large mark on it.
Well, if that isn't the answer, it's certainly a well-improvised one. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
In the cliche, almost movie image of a dancer's career, the dancer is taken to see a great dancer as a little girl and is transformed that moment. It didn't exactly happen that way according to what I read.
No, unfortunately. I'm ashamed to say that I was taken when I was 6, I think, to see Anna Pavlova, who I still think was the greatest dancer the world has ever seen. And at the age of 6, I wasn't terribly impressed. As I had had about 3 dancing classes myself, I thought I could do nearly as well. But, of course, age and experience have taught me otherwise, and I do believe that there has never been a dancer as great as, in her way, emotionally, expressively, from the point of view of the fire and the passion that she put into her dancing, as Anna Pavlova. And there are films existing of her.
Yes, there's one that was made on a Hollywood movie set.
They were
she was visiting a
Well, she was great friends with Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, and they persuaded her. They were making a movie at the time when she was in California. They persuaded her to film some of her dances on the set that they happened to be using for I don't know what movie. And apparently, when she saw the films herself, she was very dissatisfied with her own dancing and didn't want the films to be seen. So one is really cheating a great deal in using them, but I do use 3 of the dances in the television series, The Magic of Dance, because one can see, especially if you're a dancer, I think you can see what she does that nobody else does. I mean, so far as the steps go, she does a few pas de bourrées, an arabesque, something here and there. I mean, it doesn't matter what the steps are. It is the expression of the dance. I mean, when she does the Dying Swan, it is not remotely like any of the Dying Swans that you can see anybody else doing today. It is something completely unique and just, it's Anna Pavlova. I mean, you just have to say that. It's unique.
And yet she found it wanting and that it didn't show her off.
Well, I understand that when she saw it, because one can see certain technical things which are not quite correct, but it doesn't matter. That's not really what it was all about.
Yeah. The word dedication, though, is always used in dancers, and you have some quarrel with that.
Well, it's a nasty word, don't you think it is?
Dedicated.
Yes. Are you dedicated, for example?
No.
No, good. I mean, you are fantastic. I do think your show is great, that you do it marvelously.
Oh, thank you. But we're not dedicated.
Well, if people said you must be dedicated to do your show so well, would you like that?
No, it's as if you'd go without eating or anything to do it.
I mean, yes.
I wouldn't do that.
It's a depressing attitude to life, don't you think it is?
And do you think it's dangerous to impose that idea on young dancers, to say you have to be dedicated beyond all else?
Well, luckily people didn't tell me that when I was young. If they did, I'm sure I would never have gone into dancing. I would have said, well, if that's what it means, I don't want to do it.
I liked what you said one time, that something to the effect that if people knew how cruelly painful or physically cruel, I guess it was, dancing is, only those people who can enjoy a bullfight would would go to watch it.
Well, yes, I regret saying that.
Do you want to modify that any?
Yes, I think what happens with a dancer is that every now and then you have a pulled muscle or something, and you are going to do the performance, you know you're going to do the performance, and it does cost you a certain amount of pain. And you say, oh, you know, if people knew it, this was like that. But if somebody sees you the next week and they say, how's your ankle? And you say, which ankle? What's wrong with it? You have completely forgotten. Once the pain is gone, you completely forget about it. Mm-hmm. And when people ask how your ankle is, you don't know what they're talking about. You say, was my ankle hurting me? Well, last week you said if people knew what it was like to dance and so forth, so forth. You say, oh, I forgot about that. It just goes like that, it just goes.
That reminds me, I had a conversation once with Fred Astaire about that, and he said, I've been in pain since I was 26 years old from dancing.
You mean he wasn't in pain before that?
Well,
he was dancing since he was about 4.5.
Maybe he said 16. I remember it said in there, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Something with a 6 in it.
I heard that Tamara Karsavina said to somebody, I've been dancing for 45 years and exhausted all the time.
Hasn't had a moment's rest in 45 years.
No, just that one tends to be exhausted all the time. It's rather a way of life. But then we like to complain about it, mind you. We like to feel exhausted. We feel that we've been working hard. We've done a good job. We're exhausted.
Was there a time, though, in your career when you were almost, if not literally, so tired that you didn't know what performance you were doing?
Because during the war we were very fortunate in that we were able to continue performing all through the war, but we did do about 9 performances a week. And we were on tour, and the conditions weren't terribly good in England. One had food, but it wasn't necessarily exactly the food you would have chosen. And so one did really get very exhausted then, and I would sometimes wonder which ballet I was in. Halfway through Giselle, I would get a bit confused and wonder if I was in Swan Lake. In fact, there are 2 steps that are very similar. There's a step in Swan Lake and there's a step in Giselle, which are very similar. It's just a short little step with an entrechat and a releve or something like that. And I found that I did get confused with the similarity of these steps, and when I was doing them during the war, I decided to do the same version of the step in each ballet so that I wouldn't have this momentary worry of which one I should be doing, because it was Swan Lake Monday and Tuesday night and Giselle Wednesday afternoon and that kind of thing. So I got a bit confused.
Might easily have started one and ended with the other and have to give back half the ticket.
Yes, that's what I was worried, that I would start in Swan Lake and end up in Giselle and then have to get back to Swan Lake. That was what worried me.
And if no one noticed, it would be sort of depressing too, I suppose. Can you describe what your extraordinary, I used, I think the word in introduction, the extraordinary musicality that's always talked about, and everyone admits that you have it, but from your point of view, what exactly does that mean?
It means that it seems logical to me to try to dance to the music.
Now that would seem, almost, almost a given, and yet I gather that's not so easy. Or it's not natural.
It isn't always, and dancers don't always dance to the music in ballet, principally because the steps that you are trying to do are sometimes difficult. And while you're thinking about how you are doing the step or trying to do something, you just forget to do it to the music. It can happen, but I think the ideal is really to match the two and to match the phrasing and to use the phrasing of the music to accentuate the meaning of what one is dancing.
Should the step happen exactly with the music? Or I once saw a Broadway choreographer, Lee Theodore, say to someone, you're moving exactly on the music or a little late. You should make the music happen, meaning be just a trifle ahead so that the da-da-da-dum is caused by the motion rather than...
Well, I think what that means is that one is aware ahead of time, one is aware in one's head or whatever it is that looks after music, I don't know. One is aware that the music is going to finish or that the note is going to be at that moment, and so the body has to arrive at that moment. You can't wait until you hear it and then go like that. You're too late. Yeah. The body has to be in the movement to step on that note. Yes. And I think that is what he meant. I know that when I'm dancing, I am very conscious that the end of the musical phrase will be at a certain time, and I am timing the whole phrase to arrive at that minute. If, for example, the conductor, trying to be helpful, thinks she's not going to get there, so I'll stretch the orchestra out a little bit. It's very difficult because if the conductor is not doing the music, as it were, fairly rhythmically and easily, if he suddenly stretches, then it's very difficult to know how to phrase oneself to be with the music at the end of the phrase. This is getting very tiresome and boring, isn't it?
No, it isn't.
I mean, it seems to get worse. Everything I say makes it more obscure.
That made absolute sense to me. In fact, it would now be easy for me to dance any role you care to mention. Do you come by musicality racially in any sense, or do you believe in that sort of thing?
Hereditarily.
Hereditarily?
I think so, yes, in that my father's family had several musicians, music teachers, and even a minor composer. And my mother is half Irish and half Brazilian. And I think that the Brazilians are known to have a little feeling for rhythm.
Yeah. By the way, I just realized when you pronounced hereditarily so nicely, is it jarring to your ear to hear the American broad A and the word D-A-N-C-E? Because I'm so conscious of how you pronounce that word and how I do.
Dance?
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Well, dance.
Oh, dance. Well, it sounds a little eccentric.
Does it? And I'm from the Midwest where it would have been even broader. Dance would have been the way I was raised, but I've managed to class it up a little to dance.
Dance is a very flexible thing.
Dance is hard for me to, it doesn't sound effective to you if I say dance, as opposed to dance.
Well, now you've made me quite worried
I'm
about
sorry.
it. I never thought about it before at all.
I can never pronounce the word again now. The title of your series is the magic of that thing that I can't now say.
Yes.
Is that your idea for the title, the magic of dance?
Yes.
The
magic of.
Magic of.
Yes.
Yeah, you're very convincing in talking about what you mean by the magic of that there is a.
There should be magic in it, shouldn't there?
There's something beyond what you see that you can't explain in great dancing.
Yes. You don't really know yourself. You know that there's something that you have to give extra in the performance. You don't know what it is. That's why we get very nervous.
Do you still get nervous?
I think one always gets nervous for a performance, yes, because you know that you have to somehow create a bit of magic that the audience are expecting, and you really haven't any idea how you do it or how you did it the last time or if you're ever going to be able to do it again.
Can you always tell when it's there? Is it the way actors will sometimes say, it's embarrassing, you'll go back to compliment them and they'll say, well, thank you, but I was really off tonight. And does that hold true in a dance performance?
Yes, I think in any performer, and the very curious thing is that when we think we were off, the audience think we were specially good that night, and when we think we were specially good, the audience think, well, it was a good performance, but not the best.
I wonder what that is.
I've talked to a lot of people about this, even
that happens with actors.
Even one of the Japanese kabuki players.
Yes.
And he said exactly the same thing in Japanese through an interpreter. But he said, yes, in short, hi, he probably said.
Hi.
Hi, yes. But he said he had the same reaction. I said, as a matter of interest, you know, when I'm dancing, when I think it's the best performance, my mother, for example, comes and says, well, of course you were good, darling. I mean, you're always good, but I have seen you better. And it was just when I said, well, wasn't that a really good performance tonight? Yes, of course, darling, but I mean, you have done better.
Keeps you humble.
Yes, and apparently the kabuki actor had the same feeling. He said, yes, when he thought he was good, his relations
came back and said no.
That it wasn't the best performance. Yeah. No. Why is that? I don't know.
Very strange.
Somerset Maugham wrote a short story about that too, didn't he? Theatre.
What's... or
maybe it's a long story.
It's a novel.
A novel, yes.
Yeah.
But it's rather about that, yes. The actress who, when she was really filled with emotion and deeply upset emotionally and went on and gave what she thought was the performance of her life, the producer came back and said, perhaps you ought to take a holiday, you're going off, something. And it's, I don't know why it is. I think it is true in the theatre. It's very dangerous to feel that you really did well tonight.
If somebody says, hey, Peggy, do you tend to turn around anymore?
No.
Or have you forgotten that you were once Peggy?
Completely forgotten, yes. because I think when I was about 14 or something, I started to be Margot.
Mm-hmm.
And even my grandmother called me Margot. So if you don't have any relations, even old grandparents who call you by the name you used as a child, then you do lose it very quickly.
Is it that Dame Peggy would not have been quite the same as...
Well, there's Dame Peggy Ashcroft, so be careful.
There is, isn't there?
Yes,
That's right. I thought it sounded
indeed,
familiar when
yes.
I said it.
A very
Of course.
great actress and very respected. So it's all right. It's I think, rather Irish to call people Peggy or Peg. I'm glad I wasn't Peg.
Peg of my heart.
Yes, it was only because there was another Margaret. I mean, I'm really Margaret, which is the abbreviation. There was another Margaret in the family, my aunt. So I said to my mother the other day, I said, how could you have done that? How did you call me Peggy?
And did
she said she was a little embarrassed about it.
and you held it against her all this time, I think.
No, you see, she hated her own name. And she was never
What was her
allowed
own
anybody to call her. Well, she adopted the name Nita.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to be so mean as to say what her name was, but she wouldn't have it
well,
used. And she said, no, I'm going to be Nita.
Nita.
Nita. So.
Can you explain why running and walking, which would seem to be the simplest things you can do on stage, are thought by great dancers, by dancers in any kind, I guess, to be extremely difficult? What?
I wonder why it is. It's hard to explain. Have they explained to you when you've asked other dancers before? It is more difficult to do something very simple like walk to the center of the stage than to do a series of pas de chat or jetés or whatever it is to get to the center of the stage.
The simple thing makes you aware that you are doing something.
I suppose it has to be well done. I mean, just to make a simple gesture like that, it has to be done right. And for some reason, those things are more difficult to learn.
Can you give someone grace? Do you know what I mean? No, when I go like,
sometimes you succeed.
well, when I do whatever you just did, it doesn't look like what you just did. Is there a way that you can make this gesture more graceful by telling someone to have an image of what?
I think everything really is practice. That's why people go to class every day. It's simply the repetition. In fact, the French word for rehearse is répéter, which is repeat, isn't it? A répétition is a rehearsal.
Actually, the English word rehearse originally meant repeat.
That is what a rehearsal is, yes.
Yeah.
You repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat the movement, the dance, the ballet, until it becomes second nature and you can do it. And so there's really no shortcut to those things.
People were very impressed this year when Baryshnikov named Fred Astaire as maybe the great dancer of his time.
I was just going to say that he is the example of a dancer so rehearsed and so, because all those years and years he had of performing on the stage before he ever made the movies. And that's what shows in his dancing, is this perfectionism. Yeah. In fact, I interviewed him for the television series.
Yes, in fact, there's a picture in here of you talking to him.
Yes, I said that his magic was looking so easy and so natural in his dancing, and he said that it comes from rehearsing everything, rehearsing it to the point where you don't even have to think what you're doing. The body just knows how to do it. And he is a great example, I think, of
in this
marvelous.
Remarkable picture, you can see, can you take a close-up of that? There's no strain of that man staying in the air.
The perfect fluency of all his movements. Perfect, not a jerk anywhere. Everything flows into everything else, and it's a miracle to watch his dancing.
Yes, Nureyev on an early show of mine once said how much he felt he admired and stunned by Astaire's work.
I think the nice thing is that Fred Astaire didn't realize, still doesn't, that he was so great. And what is marvelous is that his films are seen now again and again, and even people who weren't born till long after he did all those things are able to see and appreciate this sort of great dancing, the simplicity of doing these very complicated things as though it was just breathing. And when I asked him about it, he said, well, I just dance.
Yes, he seems genuinely modest about it in some
Yes,
way.
I don't think he ever had any idea.
Yeah.
It's really
Can I ask you something about your private life? Your husband.
try.
Well, I won't. I won't use a trowel. But your husband is confined since a bullet wound to a
He was paralyzed.
wheelchair. Now, was
He was
that
in a
part of
wheelchair.
an attempted political? Was it a political
Well-
outbreak, an attempted assassination of someone?
It was certainly an attempted assassination because they stood about 3 feet away from him. He was in the front seat of a car,
Mm-hmm.
and the man jumped out from the car behind and stood about 3 feet away and fired 5 bullets at him.
At him
So
personally.
it was a rather unsuccessful attempted assassination because he didn't kill him.
Yeah,
A bad shot, you would say, in England.
and here.
And
And
but,
since that
did
time, he's
paralyze him.
been.
Yes, did paralyze him.
Yeah.
And he is really the most marvelous man you could possibly meet. He's special. I
Apparently,
would
you always
say.
hear
He
this
is
about
very,
him. I
very cheerful and makes everybody laugh all the time. And,
Could you
he's
get
great.
through life as a dancer if your movement were totally impaired, do you think?
Not as a dancer, no, and I wouldn't get through very well because I don't have a very well-organized brain, as my husband has. His great resource is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he says, well, being paralyzed gives you more time to think. So he has always, being a lawyer, he's always been trained to use his brain, and he has a very good brain, and he can just sit in his wheelchair and think coherently about something or other. And of course, I can't think coherently for more than a second.
That's hard to
I wouldn't do
believe,
it
but
all.
I'll accept that if you say so. You once smuggled Nureyev into a rehearsal, didn't you?
It was that when he was first coming to London, and we wanted him to come and appear at a charity gala, and he had recently left Russia and was in Paris, wanted to come to London. So there would have been a great deal of fuss and publicity in the newspapers following him if he had come as Nureyev.
Mm-hmm.
So we simply said, well, why don't you come to London and you can stay for 2 days and we'll just say you're somebody else. So we said he was Jasinski or something like that. And he went, saw the performances, went to the class. Only one of the dancers in the Royal Ballet class said, I think you're Nureyev, aren't you? And he said, no, I'm Jasinski. But it meant that
you got away with it?
Yes, it meant that he was able to see everything go around London, and people really didn't know who he was.
So you two haven't been pinched lately, have you?
No, not lately, no.
Well,
Well,
how-
one can't repeat the same things in life. You have to go and do something different all the time, and it's boring to...
That's
to
right. You
repeat
can
the
never go
story.
back. How many years ago it was? For those who don't recall, the two of you were at a party somewhere where some people were smoking some illegal
It
substance.
was, I think, the first year of the flower people in San Francisco, and they were a tourist attraction in
Yes.
those days. So somehow or other we got involved in the tourist attraction and ended up in the jail.
There's a wonderful photo. You never were behind bars in the as we call it, the slammer, were you? They just booked the people
No.
at the party or something. There's a wonderful picture of Nureyev sitting there defiantly on a bench waiting to be booked next to a couple of derelicts on the other side. He's just wondering what's wrong with this picture, is the cat should be the caption. Yes,
It produced some very funny cartoons in the
Mhm.
newspapers.
Are there any substances that influence dancers? You almost never hear of a dancer being on drugs the way you do musicians, people in
No.
other parts of the
I
arts.
think it would be impossible. You really need your wits about you to dance.
You have to have it all there.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You have
And-
to think very quickly, and of course the very good dancers have very quick brains. They think very-
Do you approve of films of your own dancing that you've seen any more than Pavlova did hers?
No, I don't like to see my own dancing at all. I always say, oh, why did you do that? And point that foot and straighten that knee. And I get very upset.
But is it that it's simply you that see something wrong with it, or Do you think that other people would too, and you'd
I hope
rather
not everybody sees it as badly as I do.
you wouldn't rather that the films were destroyed of your dancing so that they wouldn't judge?
I think it must have been very nice to have lived before the age in which it was possible to film dancing.
Really?
Yes. One
And it
doesn't
wouldn't
know
be-
the great dancers of the last century remain great names. Nobody can show a film and say, well, she wasn't as good as somebody else now.
And there isn't even a foot of film of Nijinsky dancing, is there?
No.
Because there was
none.
film. It's amazing that there was, I mean, at the time it had been
Yes,
invented.
there's none of
and it's,
Nijinsky, none of Karsavina.
Remarkable.
No.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm certainly glad you got up out of the corps de ballet, and you think you could have been happy in the corps all your life just to be near dancing?
I don't know, really. I like
Hard to-
dancing. I mean, the thing about doing ballet is that it really is a strain and a responsibility, and one doesn't always enjoy it. You don't enjoy it before you do the performance. Sometimes you're satisfied afterwards and feel, well, it wasn't so bad. But, I mean, that is a strain. It's a difficult way to dance, and I'm very happy just dancing.
Well, please don't ever stop. Not on my account. Dame Margot Fontaine, thank you. It's a great thrill to have you here.
Thank you.
Pleasure. See you tomorrow night.